So, as the title of my presentation says, I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes or so talking about customer success. But it's not about rewriting your software. It is about rewriting your company. And the next 25 minutes or so, I'll try and explain exactly what I mean by that. But first of all, I do want to kick off by saying, given that I'm in front of maybe 500 or 600 people in this room of customer success professionals, an admission and a declaration. I have never worked directly in customer success, nor customer service, nor any other derivative of customer experience. What I have done, and spent the last 20 years or so working in various different industries as a general manager, so in the 1990s, spent it in publishing and media, through the year 2000s, hi John, thanks for taking a picture, year 2000s in telecommunications before joining Box a year or so ago. And the companies I've worked for would consider themselves to be high-profile brands. They would say that they're institutions, having been in existence for more than 100 years. They would even go as far as saying that they were focused on the customer. Certainly if you read their literature, their propaganda in some of their annual reports, they say things like, we build the business around the customer, we're customer obsessed. And my personal favorite, we listen to the voice of the customer. Have you heard that one? But what I found, and actually it's a good segue from the presentation we've just seen from Bain, but what I found certainly about 5 or 6 years ago, reading that particular book, that there was a stark contrast, a big disconnect between that sort of rhetoric and how their customers felt in reality. Meanwhile, there was this new breed of organization, new breed of customers, some of which was showed earlier on, companies like Box, for instance, who had captured a huge amount of market share in a relatively short period of time by completely redefining what customer experience means. And I don't think they're any better, any smarter, or any cleverer, but I think what was the case, and certainly my reflections and experience on this, is that they recognized that the world had changed, and therefore they needed to change too. So in many respects, this presentation is a bit about my own personal observations over the last 20 years, certainly arriving at Box a year ago, and actually now understanding when one talks about customer success, what all the fuss is about. So Dan and I spoke on Friday, and he gave me a few pieces of advice. He said, first of all, David, leave the audience with at least one key learning. I think I can do that. He also said, try and have some fun. You'll be the judge of that. And he also emphasized, and actually sent an email again on it the other day, saying, do not overtly promote your own organization. So I think I failed on that point. Okay, so key learning. I'm actually going to start at the end. I'm going to give you the key learning right up front. If there's nothing else you take from this presentation, it's what's going to be contained on this slide and the next couple of slides. Now, we're all in tech to an extent, and I'm sure if you personally, your product teams will be familiar with the concept of product market fit. That is, being in a good market and having a product that satisfies that market. Now, I subscribe to the concept of product market fit. I think it's absolutely critical for scale and success. I hate the definition. I think the definition of product market fit should be more like, actually, being in a good market, but offering a service that perfectly matches customers' needs. And when you define and reflect on product market fit in that way, you then come to realize that you cannot achieve product market fit just by investing in tech alone. I've seen it so often that if we could only purchase this piece of software, if we could only implement this piece of tech, then we would be successful. Instead, and it again relates to what we just said, first and foremost, you have to take the opportunity, whichever market you're going into, to completely reimagine the business processes, the workflows, the way things get done, whilst at the same time, massively empowering your people. That is my suggestion of the key to achieving product market fit. And when you do that, customer success can become one of your ace cards in your pack, alongside marketing, channel, and sales. So that's the key learning, that's the summary. Now I want to go back to the beginning and ask a question which I asked when I first heard about customer success: why bother? And I guess the answer to that, in simple terms, is because we're living in the age of the customer. Today's customers, as we're all aware, have more and more power. They can literally shift entire markets, transform entire businesses in a matter of seconds, literally overnight. It's like it's a revolution. In fact, some say it's like the fourth industrial revolution, where this is now this blurring between the boundaries of the physical and digital worlds, and customers seem to be at the heart of it. And we customers, we're not interested in features and gimmicks, etc. The only thing we're interested in is a complete customer experience with the minimal amount of effort. And it's the organizations that get that, the organizations that understand it and choose to leverage it, are the ones that are successful and can disrupt entire industries. In the Bain presentation, we just saw a couple of examples. Here's a few more. Spotify took advantage of those same revolution, the same shifts in customer focus in order to completely disrupt the music and entertainment industry. Closer to home, Deliveroo, completely changing the workflows and processes around the customer in order to transform the hospitality sector. And Netflix, probably becoming the most instantly recognizable brand on the planet, again, by understanding the shift that was taking place in the customer and building their business to be customer-focused from the ground up. It's as if, in many respects, truly customer-centric organizations are taking over the world. They're certainly going after every industry, be it financial services, pharmaceuticals, media, travel, transportation, and many more. And what that means for us, every one of us, every business, every organization in this world, is that we too need to be truly customer-centric in order to compete. So, a quick key question. How does one go about building a truly customer-centric organization? So this is a question that I see being posed quite often. How does one go about building a customer-centric organization? In fact, the conversation usually goes along the lines of, if I could just build an app, or maybe invest in some technology, or bring in a platform like Box, then my customers would love me. And that problem would be sorted. Well, we all know it's not quite as easy as that. To reiterate, you can't just take software, you can't just take a platform and overlay it onto the same product, the same business processes, the same legacy workflow, and all of a sudden declare yourself customer-centric. It doesn't work like that. In fact, I would go as far as to say that companies that ignore that particular piece of advice do so at their own peril. So we're now going to do a bit of a deep dive on one particular organization, using a Netflix example as a theme again. But put your hands up if you remember Blockbusters. Remember Blockbusters? Yeah. So Blockbusters did exactly this. They took the same product, the same workflows, the same business process, and they put a new website on top of it. And they tried to compete in the digital world. And of course, it kind of failed, and it failed spectacularly for some of the reasons, perhaps, which we can see on the slide. So, of course, Blockbusters was limited by physical stores. Netflix was available everywhere. This is a really interesting point. Blockbusters' business model was based upon late fees. They charged you for returning the DVDs late. Completely outdated business model, which Netflix was able to counter-position relatively easily. Of course, Blockbusters was limited to the physical infrastructure within their local store. Netflix had infinite supply. Blockbusters was not necessarily renowned as being an innovator in the marketplace. I think Netflix are actually showing how you can innovate at pace. And of course, Blockbusters was one product aimed at the mass market, where Netflix, I think, are redefining what it really means to provide personalized content. The actual really interesting thing here, also about the Netflix case study, and again, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, is that when Netflix started its original business model, do you remember what it was? Does anyone remember? DVDs in the post. DVDs in the post. That was a huge revolution, sending DVDs in the post. But it actually had the foresight to recognize that wasn't going to be the end game. They predicted that where customer transformation would end up, and ultimately that they'd need to transact over the web. Hence the reason why they called the business Netflix. They didn't call it DVD in the post flicks. So Netflix won, not because it had a better app or a piece of better software. It won because it's a fundamentally customer-centric business built from the ground up. So I'm now going to step away from a particular case study and look more at an entire industry. So now, before I offend anybody, who here works in the financial services industry? Oh dear, okay. I apologise in advance. So the challenge I see with so-called, let's take banks, customer-centric banks, is they're not very customer-centric at all. Now, if you want a view of what true customer centricity is, or what people think about you from a customer-centric perspective, what do? We ask a millennial. Yeah? So if you've not seen this piece of research, it's worth taking a look at later on. It's called the Millennial Disruption Index. Lots of interesting facts and figures in there. I've pulled out a couple. So the first one is 53% of millennials don't think their bank offers anything different to other banks. 53%. Half, more than half. 73% of millennials say they would be more interested in taking banking services from a Google, an Amazon, or an Apple. There's another stat, I didn't put it on this slide because I didn't quite believe it when I saw it. But I read it on the internet, so it must be true. And it was 71% of millennials, get this, 71% of millennials, nearly 3/4, would rather go to the dentist than visit a physical branch of their bank. It's true. I read it on the internet. So what's going on here? Well, if, like me, in recent times you've had the pleasure of applying for, let's say, a mortgage through a bank, then you'll realise that those processes are not very customer-friendly at all. Let me give you my experience. So it started off with a 1-hour phone call to get a decision in principle. I describe it as 1 hour of my life I'll never get back. I was then required to verify my identity. This required getting 2 independently certified forms of ID, driving license, and a utility bill. Who has a utility bill these days? At that stage, I then had to validate my income, 6 months statements from the bank, 6 months copies of payslips, in which case I was then able to start the application process. They sent the application forms in the post in 3 batches. I spent my Sunday afternoon filling them in diligently, sent them back, at which point I was then allowed to have a valuation on the home. Great. But of course, and if you've gone through this experience, you'll know yourself, you can't actually pinpoint a time you want the valuer to turn up. You have to take the day off work, or work from home in my case, which I found particularly peculiar because the valuer literally spent less than 5 minutes in the home. Because we all know if you want to find out about sold prices, you go on Rightmove and Zoopla. Nonetheless, that enabled the conveyancing activity to take place, and 12 weeks later, with some toing and froing, a little bit of pain and a healthy dose of frustration, the application was approved. But that was not until, as I said, lots of post and mail sent through Royal Mail. And God forbid I had a question to ask, because then I'd have to speak to a call centre that only worked the hours of 9 to 5. So, why is it so difficult to create and build a truly customer-centric organisation? So there are multiple reasons. I've given a few examples already, but if there's one additional one which I want to share with you today, it's what's on the following slide. And that is, over my 20 years of working in various industries and various organisations, the single thing that distinguishes those that are truly customer-centric and those who just aspire to it, I think it was said in the last presentation, have it as an altruistic value, as a genuine value, is it's too much focus on metrics of failure. These are the speed of response, speed of resolution, first touch resolution, right first time. In fact, this individual, Vin Scully, has a great quote of this. Metrics, particularly metrics of failure, are used like a drunk uses a lamppost for support, not illumination. If you find yourself speaking to an organisation who's using metrics of failure, it's easy to identify. It's because they pass you on to somebody else. These metrics encourage the behaviour to pass you on to somebody else. If you're speaking to an organisation and they offer to pass you on to somebody else, you're speaking to an organisation that's obsessed with metrics of failure. Right, moving on. So, to an extent, I guess we're at a tech conference, and you can't have a tech conference without talking about AI and ML. So here we go, my AI and ML slide. So truly customer-centric organizations use and are using artificial intelligence and machine learning to fundamentally change the interaction they have and the engagement they have with their customers. A quick chart to illustrate it. So back in the 1990s, when I started my career, the organizations I worked for, they literally only had a telephone number, a name, and if they were lucky, an email address. So they were forced to only provide reactive support. Fast forward a couple of decades to where we are now and look forward into the future, organizations can now take advantage of insights provided by machine learning and artificial intelligence to provide truly one-to-one engagement, proactive engagement, if not predictive engagement. Taking advantage of, for example, your past history, real-time diagnostics, even servicing behaviors from other personas. In fact, if I do a compare and contrast between legacy organizations of the past and what I see in the modern reality today, it would be as follows. So first and foremost, as I've just mentioned, in the past, organizations were very much focused on reactive customer support. Modern organizations provide proactive, if not predictive support. The next one is particularly one which I'm passionate about. Legacy organizations are obsessed with the concept of pre- and post-sales. Have you got that? Pre- and post-sales. What does that mean? Modern organizations engage their customer success teams as early in the sales cycle as possible, if not during pre-sales. It's a key differentiator. Legacy organizations merely store and manage customer information. Modern organizations listen, analyze, and apply that information to act, to create a meaningful act. And they don't just use that meaningful action and share it internally, they actually share it externally with their customers and their peer groups. And legacy organizations have siloed, particularly self-service functions, whereas modern organizations actually try and create a joined-up set of experiences and focus on customer health. Okay. So, I'm often asked what my formula is for customer success. And the genuine answer is I don't have one. But what I do have from observing trends and behaviors over the last 20 years or so is a summary of the three things, of the three biggest mistakes I've seen, and therefore your opportunity not to replicate the same. So I thought I'd share those with you before I conclude. So the first one is to re-emphasize, don't just invest in tech for efficiency. So if the business case for your investment is reduced costs, higher productivity, the chances are you're not maximizing the investment or making the right technology choice. Instead, try this. Invest in technologies that give you the opportunity to gain insights about what your customers are doing and insights that you can then act upon. A true test of whether you are a customer-centric organization or not. Second one. Legacy organizations only engage with customers once they've signed them up and at the point of renewal. Modern organizations have regular touch points. And as I mentioned before, starting that engagement, particularly with your customer success teams, as early in the sales cycle as possible. And finally, legacy organizations leave their, whatever you describe them as, customer success teams, customer service teams, customer experience teams, they leave them stand alone. Modern organizations make sure every single individual in the organization understands your customer success strategy. It's integral to what they are doing. So to wrap up, customer success, customer experience, being customer-centric is not about building or investing in technology. It is about completely rewriting your company. Thank you very much. My name is David Benjamin.